Eccoci qua, spero siamo in onda, se ci fate sapere se sentite, se è tutto ok, mettendo un commento qualcosa. E vi ringrazio. Questa intervista non è in italiano, dovrebbe essere in inglese, però potete scegliere. Se premete 1 potete ascoltarla in italiano, se invece premete 2 questa intervista sarà in inglese. Aspettate però a premere il pulsante. Volevo ok, vedo tutto ok, si sente. Matteo, Luca, ciao Antonio, ciao a tutti. Ok, adesso premete 2, automatically the speaking will be translated in English. With me there is my friend Alberto. Here we are. Magic. Alberto.
Good evening, everybody.
Here we are. So this evening we are a special friend because we contacted him 1 year ago before the pandemic started because we wanted him to be in Chivasso in our small club. I don't know if he is a legend, but he's a very interesting person and coming from a different background than us, and
for us, he's a legend. We are a little bit fangirl.
I don't know if he will be happy that we are just thinking he's a legend in 2. Maybe 4 would be better. Anyway, we wanted in Italy because for example, I saw his penguin lecture. I read something about him, and I found very interesting his work. So, Alberto, is your time to introduce our guest.
Yes, it's in the title of the live, so
Yeah, up there or down there.
And a master of psychic entertaining. Please welcome Mr. Paul Voodini.
Hello.
Paul, welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Our pleasure, absolutely. So let's start our talk, our little chat, like we are in a pub.
Okay,
so,
that sounds good.
Take it easy, right? Right. I know you started magic in a very particular way, not so ordinary. So, would you like to tell us something about this?
Yeah, absolutely. My road into magic was very unconventional. I think is probably the best way of describing it. I was always interested in the supernatural and the paranormal and science fiction and horror and anything sort of weird and wonderful. I was really into it as a child and still to this day am. But I never got the magic bug. I never. I used to see magicians on TV, and I always used to think that there must be something esoteric or paranormal in what they were doing. It didn't dawn on me that it would be tricks. When I used to see guys making the zombie ball float or even making a silk handkerchief disappear, I thought there must be some sort of technique that these guys had studied, like from the shamans, from the holy men, in the Himalayas. And I never really got into magic. I saw it. I used to think it was amazing when I saw it on TV, but I never caught the bug. I never went and joined a magic club or anything like that. And then one day, I quite literally woke up and thought, I should be a magician. That sounds like the kind of job that I should have, with all of my interests. I think I should be a magician. And at the time, the only way I thought that you could make money as a magician was by doing children's parties as a children's entertainer. So the internet had just started, really. So I thought I'll go on the internet and see if there are any magic shops on the internet. And of course, put it into Google magic shop, and it went, there were plenty of magic shops on the internet. And I bought a few props. I bought a zombie ball, and because I remember seeing it on the TV. I had no idea what it was called, but I thought I sort of figured out that it was a zombie ball by reading the descriptions of the items. And I bought a thumb tip for making a silk hanky disappear. And they arrived in the post, and I opened up the bags and had that moment that I think all magicians have time and time again, when you open up the bag, look inside and think, oh God, is that it? Is that how it works? This promised miracle is, you know, it's a piece of wire attached to your thumb that makes the ball float. You know, is that it? You know, not studying with the holy men on the Himalayas for half a century. No, a bloody piece of wire. So, but anyway, I started doing magic shows for kids. I wasn't very good at it, to be brutally honest. You know, I really sort of bluffed my way through it. I remember that I used to rehearse in my bedroom, and I thought I had a 45-minute show, and I got my first booking for a kids' party and started the show in the living room where all the kids were gathered. And what is a 45-minute show when you're taking your time in your bedroom quickly becomes a 20-minute show when you're full of adrenaline and you're going bang, one trick. And I burned through all of the material I had in 20 minutes, had nothing else. You know, I only had a set number of props and routines. And after 20 minutes, I had nothing else to do. And so I uttered the immortal words, well, does anybody want to see any of those again? and so, you know, some of the kids said, oh, do that again or do that again. So I broke all the magician's codes by doing the trick twice. And the dad of the child said he'd seen another magician do, and I can't remember what the trick was. It might have been an ambitious card routine. But he said, I saw a magician once do this trick. Can you do that trick? And I said, nope. Sorry, can't. No idea how that one works. No. And so I remember I got paid. The parents gave me the money for the show, and I literally ran up the road to where my car was, expecting them to be chasing me, demanding their money back, you know. So I had, you know, for about a year, I was a full-time children's entertainer. I got young kids myself with my wife, who's my ex-wife now. And because we had young kids ourselves, we knew lots of parents, lots of kids who were having birthdays. Okay. And when they realized that I was working as a magician, they booked me, you know, oh, we'll book you for our party. And so I had, you know, a few months of lots of gigs locally. But then, of course, when you've been on the same circuit for a few parties, people want something new. So all of those bookings dried up, and I started to have to look further afield and, you know, go, you know, the other side of the city and even to other cities for work. And when I first started working as a children's entertainer, I thought all of the kids would sit very politely and would be in awe of the magic man. And they would sit and they would applaud politely. And at the end of the show, you know, they'd carry me off on their shoulders and I'd wave as I went down the road, and they'd cheer me off, you know. And I very quickly realized that it's nothing like that at all. You know, you are basically a glorified babysitter. You're there just to keep the kids quiet for an hour. So the parents don't have to do the job themselves. That's essentially it. And I started to really not look forward to doing these parties. You know, I had parties with some terrible kids. I had some parties with some wonderful kids, don't get me wrong, but there were parties with some awful kids. And I started to dread the weekend because, you know, most of my bookings were the weekend, a couple of parties on a Saturday, a couple on a Sunday, maybe one or two midweek. And I started to dread the weekend coming round. And I thought, this can't be right. I used to like the weekends. I used to look forward to the weekends. now I hate them. So I started to hear on the grapevine about something called close-up magic, and it was performed at wedding receptions and corporate events for adults. And I thought that sounds a lot more like the kind of stuff I should be doing. So I started my website at one time, just said, you know, children's magician and balloon modeler. I quickly found out that being able to model balloons filled up half the show. I didn't need to do a show. I could just stand there making balloons for half the time. I learned how to do a few balloon models, and I changed the website to say children's entertainer and magic for grown-ups, magic for wedding receptions and corporate events. And I got a booking for a wedding reception about 6 months in the future. And that was great. Oh, fantastic. This is going to be great. And about 2 weeks before the wedding reception, I thought to myself, what am I actually going to do at this wedding reception? Because I was still just doing kids shows, and I knew that chasing the mother of the bride around the reception with a zombie ball going, hey, hey, wasn't going to work. I used to have a trick with a bottle that you poured water in and you turned the bottle upside down and the water stayed in the bottle. Well, 80% of the time the water stayed in the bottle. 20% of the time it just came fine, which is fine for kids' parties. It's funny for kids' parties.
Yeah.
But at a wedding reception, going up to the table where the bride is with this bottle of water, and so I thought, I'm going to have to learn some more sophisticated magic. So I ordered.
That was 2 weeks before the wedding.
2 weeks before the wedding, I decided I need to learn some sophisticated magic, and so I ordered and bought the Royal Road to Card Magic, because I'd heard that this was the Bible of card magic. So I thought, yes, I'll be very sophisticated and do all this sort of card magic, and everybody will be very impressed. The book arrived, and I started to try, and this was before it was on a video, so it was actually a book that I was sort of holding down with my knee while I was trying to do what it said with the cards. And I quickly realized that there was no way I was going to master the sort of the routines outlined in the Royal Road to Card Magic in 2 weeks. No chance at all, you know. So I thought to myself, what do I know how to do already? What can I do that would work? And as a kid, as I said, as a teenager, I was really into the paranormal and the supernatural and horror films. And I'd learned how to read tarot cards. You know, the first pack of tarot cards I had were brought back from Spain by a girlfriend at the time who went on holiday, and you couldn't get tarot cards in the UK. They just weren't available. But she brought a pack back from Spain when I was in my early 20s, and I remember holding them like, oh, the Holy Grail, an actual pack of tarot cards. These days, of course, you can't walk into a shop without tripping over a package of tarot cards. You know, every bookshop in the world carries, you know, copious amounts. But back in those days, they were very rare. But I'd learned how to read the tarot cards, and I'd also learned how to read palms. So I thought to myself, well, I knew a few self-working card tricks, so I thought, I've got those. How about I do some palm reading? And then if anybody's feeling really adventurous, I can offer them a tarot card reading. And I had no idea what close-up magic was. I had no idea that magicians in general didn't do palm readings, because I had no experience. I'd never been a member of a club. I was completely sort of self-taught. You know, I didn't teach myself very much, but what I did know was self-taught. So I saw no problem in doing palm readings. In my mind, a magician is a guy who knows how to read palms. You know, to me, it stood to reason. So I went to the wedding. I did a few self-working card tricks, and then I read somebody's palm, and the rest of the room, all, you know, almost en masse, were calling me over to their tables. They wanted their palm reading. So that was great. That was fantastic. And so I started. At first, I was still doing half of my work was still doing the kids' parties, but the working at wedding receptions and other events started to take off as well. And all the time I was just doing, you know, a few self-working card tricks and reading palms. And if I needed to, I could say, does anybody fancy a tarot card reading? And, you know, somebody would say yes, and I'd do that. And I saw no problem with that at all. Nobody ever complained. Nobody ever said this isn't close-up magic. Because, you know, I often say, for a lay audience, for normal people who aren't in this world, they have a very broad definition, I think, of what magic is. And to them, magic is everything from Dynamo to Darren Brown to the Long Island Medium to Uri Geller. It's everybody who does weird stuff, you know, the kind of stuff that you imagine you would see at Hogwarts or a wizard doing. You know, they don't have the same compartments that we have. And so I for about 6 months, I was doing this. It was great. The bookings were coming in. Everybody gave good feedback. And then I got booked in my hometown, in my city, to work at a university event, and in the city where I live, Sheffield in England, there's a big medical university, and they were having a retirement ball for an old professor who'd been there. He was in his 70s, he'd been there forever, as the head of departments, and so they were having a big what we call a black tie event, dinner jackets, and very posh, very upmarket. And this was in a big hotel in a big dining room, and it was too big for just one person to get around every table in the time. So they booked two magicians, me and another guy. And I met the other magician in the bar before we went through to work in the dining room, and he said to me, "What will you be doing tonight? What routines do you do?" So I said, "Well, I've got a few self-working card tricks, and I'll be reading palms, and I've got my tarot cards with me as well in case anybody wants a tarot card reading." And the look on his face was almost as though he'd come across the Antichrist. He was like, "What? You're doing what?" And then of course the doors opened, and the master of ceremonies said, "Please, everybody, take your seats in the dining room." And we went through, and we agreed, okay, I'll start at that side of the dining room, you start at that side, and when we meet in the middle, we know all the tables are done. So that was great. So I went to my first table and did a few card tricks, read a few palms, and then I thought, before I go to my next table, I'm just going to sneak over to the other side of the dining room and see what the other guy is doing. So I walked around, had a look, and he was doing linking rings. He was doing the ropes, the longer and the shorter ropes. Something that I've never understood. Whenever I see a magician doing that, I just sort of smile and nod because I've no idea what's going on. Oh, is it longer now? Is it? I don't know. Is it? Oh, is it shorter? Well, I'm confused. Fine, so I just nod and smile. But anyway, he was doing those kind of routines, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's real close-up magic. That's what a real magician does. What I'm doing is completely wrong. I'm a fraud. I'm a complete fraud." And so I had a bit of a crisis of confidence where I went to my next table, and I was below par. I was terrified that people were going to say, "This isn't real magic. That's not magic." And then I got called over by the woman who booked both of us, both the magicians, to work at the event. She called me over and she said, "Oh, the table in the middle, the big table in the middle, is where the professor who's retiring is sat. Can you go over there and just do something special for him? Because he was quite old and he couldn't stay out all night. He couldn't stay, to the end of the event. He wanted to have his meal and then leave. So she says, before he goes, can you just go over and do something special for him?" And I was thinking, no, you don't want me. You want the other guy. The other guy, he's the real magician. You want him. But I couldn't say that, of course. So I said, "Yeah, sure, of course, yes." So I went over to that table and I just developed the routine that that I've used so many times in my life, called the Hand of Destiny, which is the marked card and the palm reading, where you use the marked deck. The volunteer freely selects a card, and then you read their palm and tell them what card they've secretly chosen, because of what you can see in their palm. But really, it's a marked card. And I did that routine for him, and he was absolutely blown away. Everybody was stood around watching. There's like people stood around the table watching. And I did the routine. He was like completely amazed that I got the card right, and everybody was sort of standing around clapping and applauding. And I thought, well, there you go. Magic is in the mind of the beholder. It's not up to us to define what magic is. It's up to the people who watch it. And if they're entertained, if they're having a good time, and if it seems vaguely magical, then to them that's magic. And so I haven't sort of had that crisis of confidence ever again. I know I'm different from most magicians, but that's okay. It's nice to be different, I think. So that was my route into magic. Yeah, very, very unconventional, but here I am.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about psychic entertaining. That it's I think it's your main business. If we can say that. In Italy, we don't have a really psychic entertainment like you have in England or in Great Britain and maybe in United States. Can you explain us the difference between magic or maybe bizarre magic and paranormal entertainment and maybe the real mediumship if there is a difference.
Yeah. Because I'd grown up being interested in the supernatural and the paranormal, and because I taught myself to read tarot cards, and because I decided that I was now going to be a magician, and I had to make money, this was how I made money. So I started, alongside doing the shows, doing the wedding receptions, alongside the corporate events, and still the occasional kids show, I would also, during the week, advertise myself as a tarot card reader. And I would go to people's homes, read tarot cards. And if I had no bookings for a weekend, I would often go to a psychic fair. Now, I don't know if you have psychic fairs in Italy, but they're a little bit like craft fairs where people sell, things that they've made, sell clothes, sell, kitchen utensils. A psychic fair is a bit like that, but people sell gemstones and tarot cards and pendulums. And alongside that, and some people sell clothes and things sort of vaguely sort of hippie-ish and esoteric and new agey. Anything along those lines is, goes down great. But alongside that, there are people giving tarot card readings, and 80% of people is tarot card readings. Every now and again, people offer different things, such as aura readings. But in the UK, for certain, tarot cards are king in that market. And so I was working at a psychic fair one weekend, and a guy came up to me and he said, I run an events company, and our events are ghost hunts. We hire old castles, we hire stately homes, and we sell tickets to the general public who come along, have a meal, and then a medium will take them around. A medium will take them around the location and will tell them what spirits he's sensing or she's sensing. And also there's opportunity for the members of the public to take part in a seance and to see if they can communicate with spirits. He said, we need a tarot card reader to go around the people when they're having a meal, a bit like a close-up magician, and just give quick tarot card readings for everybody. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. So I started working for this guy. The first event I worked at, I was just employed to do an hour around the tables doing tarot card readings. And afterwards he said, okay, that's you're finished. You can leave if you want, or we're going to have a seance upstairs in the great room upstairs. We're having a seance. If you're welcome to stay. I was like, yeah, absolutely. I'm staying. Yeah. And I went in, and I'd never taken part. Well, I say I'd never taken part in a seance before. I had, but that's another story completely. This was the first time I'd seen, a medium holding a seance, and I was completely enthralled by it, completely, enchanted by it. I thought, this is amazing. And very shortly after that, on TV, was the first time Darren Brown's Seance was broadcast. And I remember watching that, and I thought, this is the kind of stuff I want to be doing. I enjoyed doing the wedding receptions. That's okay. And that paid the bills. And I didn't want to do the kids' parties anymore. I was absolutely sure of that. I'd rather face the spirits than another kids' party.
Real spirits.
Yes, I know who I'm more afraid of. And so I said to the guy, me and the guy who ran the company were a similar age, and we sort of got on well because obviously we'd had the same interests. And so I said to him, "Oh, I'm not a medium. I've never. Well, I say I've never." But that's another story. We haven't got time. But I've more or less never sold myself as a medium. But I said, I know how to host a seance. I didn't. I was just going to make it up. But I wanted to get more involved in this world, and I wanted to be, host seances. And so he started off by letting me, do a bit more on an evening, and eventually, after a few weeks and a few months, I gained his confidence enough that he said, okay, this one's yours. You can do whatever you want. It's up to you how you want to run the evening. Do it how you want. And so, to be brutally frank, a lot of the events that I was working at, they had hosts there, people who were there. Their job was to host the event and to welcome everybody and to keep the event moving. When it was time to leave the dining room, to get everybody to leave. When it was time to go to this room for a seance, to get everybody. And they were always like the MC, and their job, I thought, was almost to be like an entertainer, to keep the energy up and keep everybody engaged. But the trouble was, most of the people who hosted for this company were you know, they right, everybody. Is everybody ready? Are you ready? Right. Oh, hang on. Oh, if you want to go to the toilet, you better go now. And there was no fun,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and people used to lose interest, you know, halfway through the evening. So what I started to do was put almost like routines in and almost look at it as though I was doing a magic show. But again, I'm a terrible magician. I'm a terrible magician. So I had to sort of invent routines that didn't require any skill. So I used to start the evening by doing ESP tests, you know, and I used to have a pack of ESP cards, and I would hold one up, and everybody sort of lead everybody on a sort of meditation where they would focus on the card and see what image appeared in their mind, and then turn the card round, and people who got it right got a round of applause, and it's great. Doesn't require any skill at all, but it's great. It engages people, you know. And the only thing is, of course, is making it fun and making it entertaining and getting everybody excited about it. So I used to do routines with pendulums and things. So half of the evening used to be me doing these psychic experiments. You know, I used to call it. This is like a game show. It's
without any kind of trick, just doing
because
it.
I realized that you didn't need to have a trick. Because it works anyway. You know, I always liked the idea of a drawing duplication, but I didn't want my biggest fear with magic is getting caught, because I don't have the skills. You know, I haven't practiced sleight of hand for 20 years. Then, you know, I'm terrified of getting caught. So I devised what I call a drawing duplication, which is essentially I drew a picture of a house, like a child's drawing of a house with a black Sharpie on a piece of paper, fold it up, put it in the envelope, and get everybody in the room to focus on this. I drew a picture on here, focus on the envelope, and see what picture appears in your mind. What do you think this picture is? It's, you know, an ESP test, you know, and then you open it up, and I always drew a house, and it has never let me down yet. Somebody in the audience has always seen a house, and of course they stand up, everybody gives them a round of applause. You know, is this, you know, and you can sort of build it up by saying, is this the actual house that you saw in your mind? And people go, yes, it is. Yes, that's exactly how it is. You know, and it's simple. There's no trick. There's nothing to get caught, but people enjoy it and it's fun. And I remember lecturing at a magic club in England and, you know, doing this routine, explaining the routine, and a magician put his hand up and said, do you know what? If you put a sun up there and then you drew a tree and put a cat on it and a bicycle, you get everybody in the room. You'd expect to say, yes, there they are. And I thought, no, isn't that typical magician thinking, over complicating it and turning something simple into some, because, you know, of course you could put everything on that picture. You could draw a picture with everything on it and everybody in the room's right. And I said the most powerful time that this worked was it was for a rugby club for their Christmas party. And out of a room of 100 people, just one person got it right. And I said that was the most powerful time. It worked. And this magician, another magician, was like, one person got it right, and that's powerful. Oh, you know, just couldn't get it. Whereas for me, one person getting it right means that they are the most psychic person in the world. It's not a trick. If it was a trick, everybody would get it right, you know. I think that's the difference between what I term psychic entertainment and magic, is that it's not a trick, you know. Of course, there's psychological elements. There's, you know, the law of averages, you know, that the drawing duplication with the house, you know, somebody will think of a house, and so far for me they have, and, you know, things like with pendulums, you know, sometimes everybody's pendulum swings, sometimes half people's pendulum swings, sometimes one person's pendulum swings. That's the fun of it. That's the fun. That's what makes it appear more real to the audience. That's what makes it more fun for me as a performer, because I never know what's going to happen. You know, it's not like an ambitious card routine where, you know, as long as you do the moves right, that card is always going to be on the top, and that's great. No, that's fantastic. But doing these kind of routines, it keeps you as a performer on your edge. That you can't help but have adrenaline in your body because you're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Who knows what's going to happen? So it's as interesting for me as a performer as it is for the audience. And so that was how I got into what now is loosely termed psychic entertainment. I started doing the show that I would do on the ghost hunt nights. I started doing in other venues as well. I used to hire halls myself and sell tickets myself, or if a corporate event wanted a stage show, I could offer them this stage show because it was very formulated like routines. There were routines that were linked into each other. We started with an ESP test, and then we got some volunteers on stage and did pendulums, and then one of those volunteers who did really well with the pendulums went on to broadcast a picture of the house out to the rest of the audience, etc. And so it sort of framed almost very much like a magic show with routines that slotted into each other quite nicely. And to the audience, it felt like a magic. Oh, well, did it feel like a magic show? That's the wrong way of expressing it. But it was an entertaining show, and so I used to do that anywhere that they would have me, and that's how I got into what is now loosely termed psychic entertainment. That's just the way I do it. But other people do it very differently, and I think I often get lumped in with bizarre magic because people don't know where else to put me, because it's sort of like mentalism, but but there's no billet switches or there's no impression pads, and it's sort of like bizarre magic because there's ghosts and spirits, and of course I was doing the seances as well. Of course, that's another aspect, is what I learned from doing the seances. Which was another thing. We're talking about trickery. During my seances, I never engaged in trickery because, again, I didn't want to get caught. And I quickly discovered that put people in a darkened room, tell them to hold hands, tell them we're going to have a seance, turn out all the lights, and just let their imaginations do the rest, because it will.
Yes.
And I just another quick story on the thing of the trickery. I used to do a lot of what is called glass moving or glass divination, which is very similar to a Ouija board. It's letters of the alphabet around a table and an upturned wine glass that is used like the planchette in the Ouija board. And that was almost my piece de resistance of an evening of ghost hunting or paranormal entertainment or psychic entertainment. And people used to enjoy that often more than the seance itself. We always used to build up like a pyramid, start off with the ESP tests and the psychic tests for the audience, then move on to the glass moving, and then finish with the seance. So it was all building up to the seance. And the glass moving, often people afterwards would say the glass moving was my favorite bit, because it really is. It's an old phrase, isn't it? It's a cliche, but it really is magic that happens in the hands of the spectator. I was never anywhere near that table. I would never put my hands on the glass. I was just the host. I was just leading the experience. And when that glass moves for somebody, for a lay audience, and I've done it for magicians, it's weird when that glass starts to move, and it feels like you aren't pushing it. You genuinely feel like you aren't pushing it, so it's great. But I always remember at the end of one session, a little old lady came up and literally turned the table upside down. I used to have a table that I took with me everywhere, the right size, the right shape, the right height. I used to put it in the back of the car and used to take it everywhere with me to where I was doing the show. And she literally turned the table upside down, looking for the gears and the cogs and the wires that was making the glass move. And of course, there's nothing to see, because it doesn't work like that. But you can buy Ouija boards that work like that. And the trouble is, if that's a trick and the people find it, then everything else was a trick. Oh, of course, I saw the house on in my mind, but it was some trick. He'd obviously pulled some trick. So that's why I don't like using tricks, is because if I bring one trick into the act, then if that gets found out, if somebody says I know how that works, then they assume that the rest of it is a trick when it's not. So
also the reaction of a person turning a table upside down is wonderful. It gives to the evening another level of experience, no? So because this person was really convinced that something was happening and could not believe it. So it was
it was that they were thinking this has to be a trick. There has to be something. Is it magnets or what? Something is moving that glass, and of course, there's nothing to find. There is nothing to find. Yeah,
and she could find just a scratch or a mark, and she will say, "That's it."
Yeah, no? That's right. Yeah, but it was just a wooden table, a wooden coffee table, and that there's nothing to find. So so that was my sort of journey into bizarre magic and mentalism and psychic entertainment, however you want to describe it.
I find this approach very interesting, and I see your video about question and answer, and I think it's very similar, the approach, because you don't do the typical divination of the question, because it's not so important, the question.
Yeah. I mean, I should point out that I've got a new show at the moment, a 2-person show called Kindred Spirits, which is based in the Victorian era, Victorian spiritualism, and we do in that after everything I've said. But this is a theatrical show. It's meant to be a piece of theatre, and we do use tricks in that. We do a Q&A section to that. That is one ahead. With sealed air, just a classic one ahead methodology. But when I was working by myself years ago, I used to go and watch mediums working, and we should explain to people in Italy shortly the difference between mediums in the UK and the US and continental Europe. But I used to go and see a lot of mediums working. And in the UK, when you go to see a medium working, it's usually in a hall or a theatre where they're on stage, and they walk out on stage and they give readings to people. They will pass messages on from spirit to whoever's in the audience. And I used to go and watch them working, because even if they weren't very good, and to be honest with you, 80% of them were terrible, but even if they weren't very good, it was always an interesting evening anyway.
Terrible in which way? As a stage persona?
Oh yeah, well, both ways. Often, certainly as a stage persona, they weren't performers. They really weren't. And there's quite a few points we can make about that, but they weren't performers, and very often they weren't very good at passing the messages on. Whatever you think, wherever you think that information is coming from, whether you think it's coming from spirits, whether you think they're frauds and they're just making this stuff up, they weren't very good at it. And a quick point to make is that often in the magic and mentalism world, mediums get painted with this brush that they're all charlatans. They're all evil people out to steal your life savings, and all they're interested in is money. And I promise you, when you see a little old 60-year-old lady, frail lady, walk out onto stage with just a microphone in her hand and start trying to pass on messages from spirit, and nobody is putting their hand up, nobody is accepting the message, nobody is helping her out at all, and she just dies a death on the stage. She's not, if she is just a con man, she's not a very good one. There are easier ways to con people out of money than walking out on the stage pretending you can talk to dead people. I promise you, I have some horror stories of what are the deaths I've seen mediums die on stage. So I used to go, but even the bad ones, you would pick up little bits, little bits of information, something that might be interesting. But if you saw a good one, and there were one or two that I saw that were really good, then I almost devised a whole act on what some of them were doing. And the light bulb moment for me was I went to see a medium working at a theatre. And as you went in, everybody got a slip of paper with a question. Who would you like to communicate with? What, and the name the spirit, and what is your question? And they would fold it up, and these questions were put in a glass bowl. And I thought, fantastic! She's going to get one ahead. I need to see how she's going to get one ahead. So the medium came out on stage, and the glass bowl was put on stage next to her on a table, and she picked up the first billet, what we would call a billet. She would probably call a piece of paper, and she opened it up, and she said, this is a question for a spirit called George. Is the person here who wrote this question for George? George, are you Are you at peace now? And they, yes, I wrote that question. Oh, can you stand up for me, my darling? Yes. Right, I'll try and communicate with George for you now. And I suddenly thought that's why people ask questions, not so the mentalist can show off at how clever they are. They ask the questions because they want an answer to the question. So, so that was a light bulb moment for me. But as I say, I should point out that I'm not, saying anything bad about, mentalists doing, a Q&A act, because I do one now in my new show. Well, I don't. My partner does the hard work, as it were, with a classic one ahead. So, I'm just saying that for me, in a quite a different setting to where the new show is, that it just made sense to answer the question. So I used to do that routine. I used to get everybody who came in to write a question, and I used to answer it. But I used to say I'm not a medium. That was always important to me, to say I'm not a medium, but say I'm intuitive. We can all do this, ladies and gentlemen. We're all a little bit psychic. We all have flashes of inspiration. We can all do this, but I'm just lucky that I've had the chance and the opportunity to develop this skill. And using that skill, I will try to answer your question. And so I used to answer the questions. Then, of course, and we were talking about it before, I used to get people coming up after the show and saying to me, the spirits are very angry with you. You are a medium. You should accept your mediumship abilities and stop pretending that you're not a medium. So, people will believe what people want to believe, no matter how much mentalists and magicians may kick and scream and try to expose, these terrible beings. People will always believe what they want to.
We have a question from...
Okay. Is in Italian. I will quickly translate. It says that in 2021, the people are still attracted by science or medium or card reading, palm reading. If so, why? And what are the difference between UK and Italy? If you know Italy.
Well, people are still obviously interested in anything remotely paranormal or supernatural. You only have to, this week, Uri Geller was on the front pages of the newspapers in the UK, getting people to move the boat in the Suez Canal. And lo and behold, the bloody boat moved. And of course, Uri Geller's there going, told you so. So, and people love it. People love that,
Is still active, Uri Geller? Because we in Italy, we don't get much information about his.
Oh, right. Yes. Well, occasionally. He's almost retired. He's got a very nice house on the banks of the Thames now. He's a very wealthy man now. But every now and again, he makes these, when something big happens, does this appearance, no doubt at the Euro Football Championships, he'll be telling people to focus, and England will score goals, because he usually does that at the Euros or the World Cup. Never does any good. He can move a boat in the Suez Canal, but he can't get England to win the World Cup. You're not that good, are you? But yeah, people love. I used to go see mediums work, and the halls would be packed. The halls would be full. One guy I used to go see a lot. He was working 5 nights a week, and he would be sold out 5 nights a week. With between 100 and 200 people in halls around the country, and he used to basically travel from hotel to hotel, and he would hold his mediumship demonstrations in function rooms in the hotel, and literally he was working 51 weeks a year, 5 nights a week, and they would be sold out. There are magicians would give their left arm for that kind of demand. So people, and in the UK and the US, I'm not sure if it's the same in Italy, there are ghost hunting shows on TV, paranormal investigations.
Maybe they try to make some Italian,
some years ago
they didn't have success.
Also,
go ahead.
I was going to say that I know there are cultural differences between the UK and the US and Italy, and probably other parts of continental Europe as well, and we could probably spend all night discussing why. But about how many years ago? 10 years ago, perhaps, I did a small tour of Turin and Florence, doing some lectures. And I was talking about mediums doing the shows, the stage demonstrations that people went along and bought tickets for. And a guy in the audience put his hand up and said, "We just don't have that in Italy. That just doesn't happen, where people essentially go to see a mediumship show. It's a show. It's on a stage, sit in rows, and it's in some, very often in a theatre." And he said in Italy, it's a medium is a little old lady dressed in black who sits by a table with a candle in a darkened room, and people come in and try to get messages from somebody who's just died. Whereas in the UK, if you go to see a medium working, doing a show, you get a wide variety of people who are there. Some people are there because they want a message. Some people are there because they really, they're true believers in mediumship. They really believe that it's a way of communicating with spirits of the dead. But you'll also get people there who are just there for a night out, just for fun, just to go and see what's happening. There, you will often find groups of women there who are either friends or their workmates, and they go out before coronavirus, of course, but they would go out once a week to, 1 week they would go to the cinema, another week they would go bowling, another week they just go to a pub. But this week we'll go see a medium. I've worked in factories in the past where people have organized, the factory, or all people who work in the factory who wanted to go were going to go and see a medium working because it's fun. Some of them would believe, some of them would be, don't know, not sure. And other people will be skeptical, wouldn't believe at all. But they're going along to be with their friends. They'll have a few glasses of wine. They'll have a good fun night out, and it's a form of entertainment. So I think that's really a big cultural difference between the UK and Italy, and maybe why it's easier for this kind of entertainment to work in the UK than it is in Italy, where these subjects are perhaps held in what the right word, more respect. That people are taught not to dabble with them. Whereas in the UK, some people tell
He's
stories
gone. He's gone.
Oh, I know. That's a great idea. Let's get the Ouija board out. See if we can talk to them. I think it very much is a difference in culture, and whether that's due to the UK is a very what's the word? The church in the UK, the Church of England, is people don't go to church every Sunday. People probably never go to church. They might go to church at Christmas to have a good old sing-song to the Christmas carols, but they don't necessarily believe in God or Jesus, but they like a good carol at Christmas. But the rest of the year, nobody bothers with religion at all. Whereas I think in Italy, and I might be wrong, you guys will probably know better than me, well, obviously would know better than me. I think in Roman Catholic countries, these subjects are more taboo. They're sort of held at arm's length, and it's more unusual for people to be interested.
Yes. Our friend Matteo is pinpointing that we have Vatican, so the Pope and all that.
You don't need to go and see a psychic
all the guys down there.
On a Sunday, you can go and see the Pope doing his show.
So they drink wine on Sundays, so when there is the mass, so. Probably like this, because we have a lot of superstitions about the death, about how can I say, is quite taboo to speak about the death or disease and stuff like that.
The black humor is not well seen here.
Oh, right,
In Great Britain, I see.
Also, I think there is another 50% that Matteo is saying that probably if we do a stuff like that, we will burn again. So, but
nobody wants the Inquisition.
Because also because mostly, as you said, there are the psychic in Italy are fraud. So they are doing just for money. And also because in Italy, this is difficult to translate. We are used to scams to try to understand who is the scammer, no? So also doing a close-up magic is difficult, no? Because many people doesn't enjoy
the
it,
moment.
no? They are trying to, you are trying to scam me, to fool me, to get my money, so I will double check everything you do, no? So a further will be that psychic entertainment is, you are doing some tricks, and do you want my money? And that's it. It's true. Because if I get on the stage and doing a show, I want your money. And that's it. So, but it's interesting because when I watched your Penguin lecture, you said that really you do the science and you don't do nothing. Also, probably because I've heard that houses in England are mostly made of woods, no?
Well,
the old houses.
The old houses, well, some are, but the places where I used to do seances would be old castles and stately homes, which would be very much stone built, or at least the castles would be. Or at least, or at least we would hope the castles would be. Otherwise, those Normans will be back over again, and there'd be no stopping them. But with the seance, because I didn't do any trickery, and I always said to people, when I was doing a seance, there are no tricks here. There's no wires, there's no magnets, there's no actors in white sheets about to jump out. Whatever happens tonight, whatever it is, it's not me making it happen. It's not me making a trick. How you interpret it is up to you. If you think it's a spirit, that's fine. That's up to you. If you think it's an old house making noises, that's fine. It's up to you. If you think it's, an interdimensional creature, that's fine. That's up to you how you interpret it. It's not my job to tell you what's happening. All I know is we're going to be in this space, we're going to call out to spirit, and we're just going to see what happens. And because of that, I could completely relax, knowing that there was nothing to be found. Again, there was the worst thing in the world would be to be halfway through a seance and for somebody to find the wire or hear the magnet scraping on the table or something. That would be terrible, because I would be mortified if I'd done something like that and people were believing this was real, and then I was sort of just tricking them. So I don't do any trickery in the sales.
Do you do some measure or how can I say, when there are, for example, the XISOP or there are skeptic society testing a medium, they are I don't know, touching their hands, they are touching the legs. Do you do something like that, or you ask to be checked, or
I don't, and it sort of never really crossed my mind to do that, because throughout the evening, I suppose, I hope that I've built up trust. That the big sort of thrust throughout the whole evening is that we're all in this together. To coin a phrase, that we're all on this journey, and the more energy we all put into it, the more enthusiasm we all have, then the better it's likely to be. But I was always very adamant that I would describe myself as the host. I'm just the host. I'm just here to to look after everybody and make sure that things move forward. But I wasn't a performer. I was one of them. I was man of the people. I was just there to help them have this experience, whatever this experience might be, and whatever might happen, we don't know. But we'll all go into this together and see what happens. So I would hope that by the time it came to the seance, people would trust me enough not to think that I've got wires and things would happen that would be a very subtle compared to, I mean, I love Eugene Berger, but his seances were very different to mine. His were completely gimmicked, and people would see things flying around, and there used to be feathers on the end of fishing lines, and goodness knows what going on. It was more like a Bob Hope film than a seance. My seances would be far more low key, far more subtle. And instead of everybody experiencing something together, instead of everybody seeing the ghost or the manifestation, people would have their own little experiences. Some people would feel hands stroking their hair. Some people would, feel a cold draft. But it would tended to be very individual experiences. And I was never there, and I'm not here now to say it was all in their mind or it was all spirits. I don't know. I've seen a ghost. I have genuinely seen a ghost. Probably the most frightening experience of my life. The only time in my life when my body quite literally was frozen with fear. I was locked. My whole body had locked with fear. I have seen a ghost. So how can I disclaim anybody else's experience? Anybody else's beliefs? I would be a hypocrite. So in the seances, I used to say, what happens, and how you interpret it is how you interpret it. It's not my job to change your mind. If you're a skeptic, I don't want you to become a believer. If you're a believer, I don't want you to lose that belief. Tonight we will just have an experience, and what happens, and it's up to you to define that experience.
Yeah. Do you believe in ghosts?
Yes, I've seen one. I've seen a ghost.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So yeah. I mean, I'm not scared of them. He said.
God.
Yes. But yeah, I've done these seances in what are supposed to be the most haunted locations in England, and during those seances, I've never had an experience. Never had an experience I couldn't explain. But when I was a teenager, I saw a ghost, and it was terrifying. It really, well, perhaps not terrifying, awe-inspiring. It was so mind-blowing that my body couldn't comprehend it. Me and a friend were in a garden, and we saw a classic white lady ghost manifest in front of us. And I remember standing, and my brain saying to my body, "Run, run," and my body just going, "Nope." And my whole body had just locked. Every muscle was just locked. And it was only when this apparition disappeared that my body relaxed, and I could run. So I believe that it is possible. What it is, I don't know. Whether it's whether it's a spirit, or whether it's something to do with time. Maybe time folds on itself instead of moving in a straight line. Maybe time folds on itself, and then sometimes images or seep through time.
Like after image, no? Something.
If something terrible happens, like a disaster or a horrible murder.
But after you seen that ghost, you passed again in the same place, and how did you feel?
I haven't been back, to be honest with you, because I was 14 years old, and it was a private garden, and it wasn't my garden. we weren't supposed to be there. We used to have a game as teenagers, before Xboxes and the internet, when you had to make your own entertainment. And this game was going along a whole road on the gardens of the houses.
Jumping the fences.
Over. Okay. Yeah. And so we were going to do this, and we were walking up a big driveway of quite a large house with a big garden in front of it. And that's when we saw it. And I haven't been back. I live quite locally to where it happened, and I've often thought about going back. But I wouldn't want to be this weird man who was sort of hanging around someone's driveway. But then
maybe there are childs.
Yes, that's right. There's a school nearby.
I'm the entertainer, the child's entertainer.
Yeah. So, and I thought about knocking on the door and asking if they've had any experiences or if they've seen this ghost, but I've never had I've never been brave enough to do that. So, but Yeah, I mean, I can still see it in my mind, but whether what I can see in my mind is what actually happened, because I think people's remembrances of what's happened, people's memory alters over time, and with the retelling of the story, each time you tell the story, it changes slightly and perhaps becomes a little bit more impressive every time. So now the story that I tell may be very far removed from what actually happened on that night. I don't know.
But it makes you more richer, no?
Oh yes. It was.
So if you believe in ghosts, when you speak about ghosts to other people, you could transmit this belief, no?
So I think,
it makes everything powerful.
Yeah. Because I mean, when I do these shows, I'm not coming from a place of skepticism or of complete belief, but from a place of I'm genuinely interested to see what happens. And I think that comes across to the audience as well, that you really are fascinated by this stuff.
It reminds me the poster between behind Fox Mulder in X-Files, no? I want to believe. I want to believe. Right. I never seen one. I don't think there are ghosts, but I want to believe. No, maybe one day we could see. Our viewers are making some comparison about the situation in Italy. No, for example, Matteo is saying that everyone is not believing in medium, but they everyone go to a country healer. Where I live in the north of Italy. There is a healer here and a healer in the in the next village. No, there is a guy who is seeing the Holy Mary.
Wow!
The Holy Mary. So and Luca Ramacciotti, another friend, is saying that Catholic is based on the pagan religions, no? So Romans were very superstitious, and the belief of bad luck has come down to us. So we in Italy we believe in the evil eye, no? Il malocchio. The bad luck, someone don't like you, so it makes something that you get bad luck. Another friend is just saying that ghosts are less scaring than politicians.
That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I do think that Catholic countries, that sense of mystery and awe and of there being something else out there is sort of tended to by the Roman Catholic Church, that still believes in the miraculous conversion of wine to Christ's blood and the Holy Sacraments, etc. That gives people that mystery. In the UK, we've completely lost that. The Church of England sort of is very is not interested in mystery anymore. I think they're not good with dead people. They don't deal with grief very well. That's all a little bit embarrassing. They're far better at collecting tins of food and handing those out to the homeless. Stuff like that they can do fine. But dealing with anything more esoteric, they completely many Church of England vicars will sort of, they talk about the Bible as being, well, it's a metaphor. Maybe Jesus didn't rise from the dead, but perhaps it's a metaphor for something else. And so that sense of mystery has gone, and so people, human beings, love that sense of the unknown. And so if the church don't provide it, then they will look elsewhere.
Found it somewhere else.
They will go to psychic fairs, or to see a medium, or to a new age shop, because they want that mystery in their life.
Probably it's like that. Also, when someone died in Italy, we have it's complicated. The funeral is made by a lot of steps.
Yeah.
There is the prayer for the night. I don't know come si dice, veglia, non lo so.
Non lo so.
Rosario, the funeral, the burying. After 1 month, there is another a mass for remembering the death, and so on and so on and so on. So in UK, it's not like that.
Not like that at all. I mean, it used to be in the Victorian era, at the height of spiritualism, which of course is where much of what I am involved with really originated. There was, there was huge mourning at funerals. They would,
mourning,
they were huge.
Okay, mourning.
Yeah, mourning as in
No, I didn't remember the word mourning.
Yeah, okay. But these days, the whole ritual of the death of a relative or a loved one has completely gone, and it's been it's been made so clinical, in that somebody who's ill goes into hospital, you go and see them, they're ill, they're obviously not well, and then one day you go back to the hospital and they're not there, and you don't see the body. The bed is clean, there's new sheets on the bed, the body's gone. We don't have open casket funerals.
We do.
Generally, normally it's and very often in the UK it's a crematorium. It's not, people aren't buried. Most people are now get burnt, for want of a better word, in a crematorium. And so the whole mystery of death is sort of washed over. And again, it's a little bit embarrassing. Oh well, best foot forward, the sort of English stiff upper lip. Well, a good cup of tea, and let's, yes, the old boy's gone now, hasn't he? Let's have a cup of tea, and that's it. And then you move on. And there isn't that chance for people to mourn like there used to be, and like evidently there still is in Italy. That's all gone from England now, and so again, people look elsewhere for answers. They go to a mediumship show because perhaps they've got the answers that the church couldn't give and that science can't give. People need that sense of mystery, I think, in their lives.
Yeah. Alberto,
okay. I think we are running out of time, but maybe I know you know a lot about medium, so maybe if you have a short story, maybe a funny story about a medium,
yeah, sure, yeah. Well, one of
close the interview.
Yeah, absolutely. When one of the points I always try to make when I do lectures, etc., and I talk about mediums, is to try and point out that not all mediums are con men or con women. That whatever they're doing, the majority of them actually believe that what they're doing is their sacred calling, especially if they're involved with spiritualism. They would see it as their holy calling is to be a conduit for the spirits and to pass on the message of the human spirit surviving death. And very often people who work for the spiritualist church will travel many miles between little churches to give demonstrations of their mediumship for, usually in a spiritualist church, no more than a dozen people very often, and they don't get paid. That they only get paid contributions. So some people would turn up at the church and do their mediumship demonstration, and they would only get £5, a few euros, not even enough to cover their petrol money. So if they're doing that week after week after week after week, there's something else motivating them other than money.
Yeah, of course.
And also, I've seen many mediums work, and as I said, 80% of them are terrible. If I was a fraudulent medium, I'd learn the tricks of mentalism, or I'd find out how Darren Brown did what he did, and I'd discover mentalism, and I'd learn that way, and then I wouldn't be so terrible. What makes me believe that a lot of mediums actually believe and really believe in what they're doing is because they're so bad at it. And if they didn't have that belief, then there's nothing else for them. There's nothing else motivating them. So anyway, funny story. Yes, I was working at an event at a stately home, at a place in England called Alton Towers, which is a theme park.
No, I know. Alton Towers.
Yeah, okay. The theme park is based around an old stately home that's like a Gothic ruin. And this was a Christmas party for people who worked for the local council. So the people who did the roadworks, the people who collect the refuse, the people who look after the parks and the recreation, all the way through to the people who work in the offices, the local government offices. So it was a big party and lots of different kinds of people. And my job was to go around the tables doing tarot card readings. So that was great, no problem. And then the theme of the evening was the supernatural, because the theme park had just opened up a new ride that was sort of like a ghost train. So everybody got to go on this new ride.
Was it designed by Dan Brown? No,
it's not that one. No,
okay.
not that one. This was a few years ago anyway.
Okay.
But so everybody who at the party went on the roller coaster, the spooky roller coaster. I was doing tarot card readings, and then after a meal, everybody had a 3-course meal, and then there was this couple, an elderly couple who were mediums, who were going to do a demonstration of mediumship, demonstrate that spirits can communicate with us. Now, this was a Christmas party for these people, and it was a free bar, which meant that all the drinks were free. And so all of the guys who worked, who were the refuse collectors, who dug up the roads, they were just drinking and drinking and drinking. And by 10 o'clock in the evening, when this elderly couple were supposed to be coming out to do their mediumship demonstration, the dining room where everybody was getting quite rowdy. There were people throwing things across the room, and people were shouting and dancing. And this elderly couple realized that this was going to be a tough gig. This wasn't their usual audience, because normally, of course, an audience for a mediumship demonstration is quite self-selecting. People go if they believe. So this was quite a different audience. And so they started to try, they talked to the organizer and said, look, I don't think this is the kind of, environment for our stand-up show. What about if we go from table to table and just give little readings for people who want them? But the organizer said, no. We booked you for a show, and we told people they're having a show. So you need to do the show. So the MC came out and said, can we have silence, please? I'd like to introduce you to our mediums for the evening. I can't remember their names. Mr. and Mrs. Brown. And they came out and everybody applauded. And Mr. Brown was quite a hefty, sort of elderly chap, and his wife was quite small, a small, frail, elderly woman. And they were using the DJ's rig for the PA system, so they had a wireless microphone that was working through the DJ's set. And so the little old lady started off. She was holding the microphone like this, and she was saying, right, I'm sensing something about a garage door. Has anybody done something with their garage door? And I think it's probably this side of the room. Anybody on this side of the room got a new garage door and been told something about a garage door? And nobody's saying anything. So she'll, right, I'll put it out to the rest of the room. Anybody else? Anybody on this side know anything about a garage door? Nobody was saying anything. All right. Well, obviously, I'll let that go. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Right. Yes, that spirit's gone. Now we've got a new spirit here. This is an elderly gentleman, and he says he died from something round here. Does anybody know an elderly gentleman who died because of, I'm feeling a pain around here? Maybe a heart attack. Anybody know an elderly gentleman who died of a heart attack? And nobody was saying anything. And then suddenly somebody went, rubbish! From his tail. And God bless her, this woman, she was on her own. Her husband was stood up by the DJ rig. He wasn't helping. And so she walked down the dance. She's going, oh, right. And anybody literally was saying, does anybody know anybody who died? Literally. and nobody was responding at all. And so after 10 minutes of this, really dying on her feet and people starting to heckle her, and she got to the far end of the room, and because she was using the radio mic, she started to blip out. So she This and her husband at the other end of the room was shouting, "You've gone out of range!" Scarper back up the room. And so after 10 minutes, 15 minutes of nobody taking anything, nobody saying yes to any of her suggestions, she turned around to her husband and said, "So, George, are you picking up anything?" And he went, "No." And that was it. That was the end of the show. George was having none of it.
Oh, for them. Ok, Alberto, chiudiamo?
Yeah.
Okay. If someone who is watching this live want to join us for a more in detail talk on Skype, just ask us the link, and with Paul we will go there on Skype to speak to fellow magician. Okay, mostly. Yeah. Okay, and that's it. Paul, is you are more a comedian than a paranormal entertainer because you are so funny. Also, Luca is saying that you are an extraordinary storyteller, and your facial expression are extraordinary too. So you are really charming and
yeah,
really entertaining. So maybe this is the real magic. Alberto, lo chiudi tu?
Yeah. I hope to see you live, maybe when the pandemic is over.
Absolutely.
Maybe to host you on our magic circle.
That would be great.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your words. It be incredible. It's been incredible, and thank you.
That's my pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Goodbye, everybody. Good night.
Goodbye. Good night.